me a few seconds. All right. Great to have you here, Emil. Do you want to give everyone a quick rundown of what you're doing over in the US? I know you've got a big background in SEO and content, and you can do some of your own affiliate sites and stuff like that. Yeah, great to have you on to chat.
Yeah, man. Thanks for inviting me and having me on. So yeah, I started doing marketing officially probably like 7-8 years ago at a company called Snack Nation. That's how, James, I don't know if you remember, that was how you and I linked up. We were using Prosperity for link building back in the day at Snack Nation, which that site's still humming, still getting tons of traffic. Yeah, like, work demand gen, various venture-backed companies. My strongest skill was always SEO and content. And 2 years ago, I went out on my own, started an SEO agency called Catalyst Content, and still humming along.
Yeah, nice one. Yeah, I mean, onto the Snack Nation stuff, because I know you had a lot of success back there. I mean, are you allowed to talk through some of the successful campaigns that you did there? Because I know there was some massive growth that you saw in-house working there, and then you went on to like Roofstock and some other businesses, and you had some massive success with some of the content that you and your team built over the years. But I mean, do you want to talk through how you develop some of that content? Because I remember looking at some of these campaigns over the years, and we had a small part to play in some of those campaigns, but they were very impressive results. So do you want to talk through some of that stuff?
Yeah. I'm not sure how much of it still applies. Google's always changing stuff, but I mean, mostly the same. So the strategy back in the day, so Snack Nation it was an office snack delivery service. So at the time, like perks were at the forefront of hiring people, keeping people engaged, and snacks played a small part in that. And so, we could talk about office snacks and, go really narrow, or we could expand it out into like the bigger categories that it fell into: employee engagement, employee perks, employee wellness, right? We were selling healthier snacks versus like Snickers and junk food. And so that was kind of the overall strategy. Is we zoomed out. Like one of our most successful early campaigns was an article called 121 employee wellness ideas, kind of using that old school backlinko skyscraper technique. I think when I searched for it, it was like 101 was the top. So we just, created 121. And our company at the time, we had like a very fun culture and like always trying to do cool, fun things. And so we like used our own internal things to create a lot of that list. So it wasn't like a generic list. It was like a lot of unique things that we were actually doing inside of the company that I could source. So that was, the overarching strategy. We just layered up into like these bigger things that companies cared about, HR people cared about, the office manager cared about, and tackled a lot of those keywords.
Do you reckon that type of strategy is still working today? Because I remember many years ago you could do that type of stuff where if you went to the SERPs and you saw like someone had the 55 best best office chairs for 2017, and then you do the 61 best office chairs, try to always get an edge on the competition. And then you could also test doing like a list that was less, like you try things like save time, here are the 5 best,
Right.
I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Because I know that stuff worked a few years ago, but I feel like Google has kind of changed the game a little bit on the really long form content, the crazy long listicle type stuff. And yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, same thing, right? Like it used to just be, I think it's a good thing. It used to be like write a 5,000 plus word guide and you just clean up for all the long tail. And now it's really about like, it's not just about shoving a bunch of keywords in something and going for the largest thing you can. It's really about intent and like, was the user satisfied? So a lot of times I'll see something that's like 25, 30 for clients, right? It's like, am I going to skyscraper that? No, usually we're going to be like, let's actually do the 15 and do something different, like best for each category, or like subcategorize them, something that's more unique rather than just arbitrarily throwing a bigger number out there.
What do you think matters when you're developing these content pieces now? Search intent matters, but I'm talking about like content design. what do you think are the factors that matter within the pieces of content that your team's doing now? Do you think it's like unique image assets, videos? I've even seen people testing like audio snippets of content and things like that. You know, in some of these groups, you see people say like, "Oh, I'm testing 20 articles with like an audio snippet and seeing if that gives me an edge over my competitors." You know, like, what do you think is moving the needle now? Because I know you're doing a lot of that type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I do it more so on like my personal sites, right? So monetizing through affiliate and ads, just because the competition I think is more fierce. I think there's a lot of industries, man, for a lot of clients, we're not doing anything like crazy visually. Like we're just creating something in WordPress. We'll even use stock images. We're not even creating unique images. But like we don't go crazy overboard. I think it helps. I think if, you know, a lot of times marketers see that in marketing articles, right? Like really nice design, all these amazing assets. And it's like, it's because it's such a tough industry and it can help set you apart to have a nice design. But honestly, you know, I work with a lot of like real estate tech companies. We don't go crazy. I think if you just have good content written by somebody who knows what they're talking about, the brand is growing, getting a lot of natural links, and you can also build links to your content. Like that's how we kind of won at Roofstock and other real estate clients too.
Yeah, I remember Roofstock really went hard on doing like those like buyer guides, you know, like best areas in Florida to invest
Yeah.
in this year and in March, or best like New York places to invest. And like, does that stuff convert quite well? I presume like some of those like area specific kind of guides. I know you see even in Australia, you see a lot of that stuff in real estate. You see like people talking about certain areas, you know, because you get the investors that are always doing research and things like that.
Exactly. So yeah, like at Roofstock, we did all these campaigns for where where Roofstock had properties listed on the marketplace. So like Georgia real estate market, or Atlanta real estate market, because that's what people were searching for. You know, like Atlanta investment properties and things like that was less. But you're right. It's like people, whether you're an investor or just somebody, you know, a home buyer looking in the area, you'll look up Atlanta real estate markets. So we would get a lot of tire kickers, you know, most of the traffic was tire kickers, but because the volume is there and investors were looking for that as well, you still get leads and conversions off those articles too. Just the percentage isn't good, but you like volume makes up for it.
Exactly. And like back to the content creation process for your team. Like I presume your team's doing like content briefs and building them out pretty in depth. And like how do you build out your content briefs? Because I know everyone's got a different flavor on doing that. You know, some people use like automation, some people just have their own process. Like what do you build out when you're doing content briefs?
Yeah, so for us, for real estate clients, I have this writer I've been working with for years. He's like really knowledgeable, has like 30 years experience from everything from property management to brokerage to investing to like everything. So we've been working together for so long that it's like he'll create an outline himself and then I'm giving him feedback on that to make it unique. But for other clients, yeah, this is something I do because I think it's that valuable. I think it's like the brief is where the magic is. And I use this tool called Topic, which actually was acquired by Cafe Media, which owns AdThrive. So luckily I'm an AdThrive user on my content site. So I still have access to that tool. But the nice thing it lets you do, I think there's, you know, Surfer and some of these other tools will do it too, is like you run a report for a keyword and it'll show you the top 10 results and it'll show you their H2s and H3s. It'll show you Google's people also ask. So you get like this nice X-ray vision on page one to see, okay, what is everyone else covering? Like, okay, here I need to cover these things, but also the key thing is like, what are we going to do to make this thing unique? Where are the gaps? Just like, what are people missing that we can include in this article that's going to set us apart? Or where are people missing the intent? Or if I was searching for this, what else would I want that people are just not delivering here?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Like looking at like the FAQs on pages and missing elements, you know, like you look into some industries and people don't even have optimized heading tags and things like that. They're missing like huge blocks of text for certain things. But then sometimes people go a little bit too crazy. You know, we had a client the other day pump out like 60 FAQs on a page, and it didn't. It looked a bit too heavy with the FAQs. You know, so I think yeah, you got to have the right mix, you know. And sometimes you don't want to double up answering the same thing like 5 times, you know. Like
Right.
we've seen stuff like that, you know. Like but talk to me about these affiliate sites that you're doing, because that's quite interesting. You know, not many agencies do their own affiliate sites, but I think it's good to have your own affiliate sites from like a testing point of view, and like seeing what works and just trying different things. Like we said earlier, with some of that more like risque stuff, like you can't go to an enterprise client and say, I want to implement this wild strategy because I think it's going to work. They're going to be like, no way. But if you got your own site, you can just do whatever, because like the risk is a lot less. So yeah, like how did you get into the affiliate site stuff? And I know you got a few sites in different niches. Do you want to first say how you got into it, and then say like how'd you pick those niches? Because I saw you're in like sports and a whole range of stuff.
Yeah. So for me, it was like I used to buy rental properties. That's actually how I got introduced into Roofstock. Like I bought a rental property through the marketplace, and you know, you get a couple and it becomes like you get 1, 2, it's not so bad, and then you get a couple and you're like, man, this is a lot of work even with a property manager. And you realize it's like not that much money, especially because, you know, I buy out of state in places that are cheaper. And what happens a lot of time is you think you're going to earn a lot more buying these like cheap properties, and what happens is they end up being very expensive on the back end. Anyway, I was, you know, I've always liked the idea of building up assets, and so rental properties were always interesting to me. And then when I started the agency, I was like, man, I've developed like these processes and systems and like hiring writers, managing writers. And I came across people like building sites, getting a ton of traffic and making like 20K a month. And I'm like, man, these people didn't even have that much SEO experience. Like, why am I not doing this as well? And so to me, it was just a way to like use our expertise and knowledge to build our own assets. And like you said, it's a cool, there's like symbiosis. We get to test things there before it makes its way to client stuff, or just, you know, we're just testing stuff on the affiliate site that's just fun and interesting and different that I wouldn't use on a client site because there's more risk there. But you can, you know, you like create new templates or ways of creating content that can, I think, be applied to a lot of client stuff as well. So I started a site shortly after I started the agency, one from scratch. It was like you said, sports niche. When I grew up playing, it just felt like there was a lot of like DR 13, 14 sites ranking. And I was like, I know this niche well enough to like be able to manage a writer, tell if the content is good, like know the topics because I played it for, you know, long enough. I'm not like starting from scratch. And that was honestly it. That was like my decision criteria for choosing that site.
Yeah, I mean, that's sometimes like one of the best things you can do is like if it's a niche that you're actually interested in, you know, like it's like working on that site is going to be easier, you know. But then other people have the mindset in like affiliate world where they're just like, oh, just get a site that's like making money, like don't worry about the niche, you know. But then it's like I'm not going to be passionate about writing about funeral insurance every day or something like that, you know what I mean? Like I'd rather write or be involved with a project that you have semi-interest in, you know? So I think that's so true.
Exactly. Semi-interest. It doesn't have to be like, you know, like I love surfing. I'm telling you, there's no money to be made in a surf site. Like what, you know, you buy a surfboard once every 4 or 5 years, if even. You buy a wetsuit every couple years. Like the surf traffic isn't there. It's too niche, right? I love surfing, but I'm not going to start a surfing niche site. It's just things you have some knowledge or interest in is going to just be helpful for you to stay in it long term. And because I'm not just doing affiliate content, it's a mix of affiliate and info. You know, there's like the info content is harder to come up with if you don't know the industry, what terms people use, the questions people have, things like that.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, like, what ratios are you trying to mix with like info and commercial content? I know that's always like something that a lot of people talk about in the industry. People have their different like ratios, but like, are you just trying to do like 80-20 info to commercial or something like that in terms of content that sits on these sites that you're building out? Like, what type of breakdown are you using?
Yeah, so I have two sports sites. The other one that I didn't mention, I actually acquired from a friend of mine who had built it up like 4 or 5 years ago with like 14 articles, and it just sat there, and it was doing like 30 to 60,000 hits a month with 14 articles. So I acquired that one, and I'm working on that one now. So in the beginning, I always started with like a lot of info content because they're just easier to rank versus, like best affiliate content. Like those are more cutthroat. I don't really have a specific percentage, with that bigger site that I acquired. I have 3 writers on it. There's one writer who's like a big gearhead, always testing equipment, and like I can just give him all the affiliate stuff, and I know he's tested 80 to 90% of the things that are on the list, which is important, right? Like Google saying they're cracking down more and more on product reviews, want to see that you actually have knowledge of the product. So I use him for a lot of affiliate content, and then my other writers, sometimes they will have specific product knowledge, or I'm just giving them the info content as basically as quick as they can handle it.
How are you doing the keyword research for these sites? Are you just looking through like GSC data, or are you just using like your own knowledge of the industry? I know you said you got personal experience, so talk us about how you come up with the content ideas in the niche. Are you looking at competitors? Are you looking at GSC queries? Like, what's having an impression count? What are you missing? Like, how are you kind of coming up with the ideation around the content that you're producing on the sites?
Yeah, so it's like I'd say 3 main things. It's my knowledge of the niche, so that'll start some seed keywords, throw them in Ahrefs, right? Like look at the other keyword, whatever phrase match, and just go down the list, try to find easy stuff to rank for. Looking at competitors, right? If I find a couple competitors who have like, the main site is a DR31. If I find a site that's DR15 or less, I'm going to grab those and just scrape them, see what they're ranking for, and just go for their stuff too. Regardless of the KD, I'm just going to be like, all right, if they're ranking in the top 3 for this keyword with a DR13, there's no reason my site shouldn't with like good writing. Also do Search Console, right? Like just pull a report last 28 days. Where was the intent wrong? Like where are we getting like a lot of impressions, but clearly this isn't quite what we were going for. That's a new topic. And then just like, man, in the beginning, it's like I think it's good when you're creating a content site to do a couple different clusters to see where Google kind of likes to show you for those queries, right? So like, you'll do like 5 different types of like little clusters, right? And for whatever reason, Google really likes you for this one. And so once I see we're getting a lot of traction on those, I'm going to go like throw in that seed keyword for that cluster and just grab as many of the other keywords I can that I think we can rank for. So it's kind of the various ways that I find keywords for those.
Okay, no, that's very interesting. I mean, what other factors on site do you play a big importance to? Are you pushing a lot of internal linking? Like, what other things are you optimizing to drive more traffic into these properties that you're working on?
Yeah, so in the beginning, always do some external backlink building, right? I think it's just like some people are so afraid of building links, and I've built links my whole career. We've worked with you guys, we offer it now to clients. It's like, man, link building will never go away, I don't think. So like, especially for a new site, like you have nothing to lose. Build some links. It's just going to speed up the process. Every site, just try to make it fast, not too many plugins, like should do well on Core Web Vitals and just for the user to load pretty quickly. Most sites now I utilize this tool because we build everything on WordPress. There's this tool called Link Whisper.
Yeah, we use that.
Yeah, Link Whisper is awesome. Really helpful for like internal link building, making sure you don't have any orphan pages. As you start to get like hundreds of blog articles, it's easy to forget which ones have links, which ones don't. So
yeah,
Link Whisper is the best tool for that. I love it. I wish they like, on client sites, some clients use like Webflow, or we even have a client on Squarespace. I wish Link Whisper was available for those too. So yeah, kind of just everything, like doing the best practices, but really I think the differentiator is like finding good writers who know the space. I try to pick niches where it's not like super general, right? Like, let's imagine like, I don't know, even like cooking sites, like, yes, you could differentiate with your unique recipes, but for the most part, a lot of people could write that, like home decor, things where it's like a general writer could write it. I try to avoid. I try to make sure they're like hobby sites where we need to find a writer who really knows what the heck they're talking about. I think those are the things that kind of help separate it.
Yeah, exactly. I think like finding like industry experts that are going to set you apart from just any Joe Blow that can pump out a million recipes, because they're so similar. But I mean, in terms of like industry experts, like how important do you think like EAT is on some of these affiliate properties that you're building out, or content assets that you're building out? Do you think it matters, or have you played around in that space a little bit? I know it's a controversial topic for some.
I haven't done any testing to be like, oh, I have 10 sites. These sites, we just kind of like don't really use an author box, don't have any social profiles, and we're still ranking versus like not. Basically every site, I'm just trying to like build those up, right? I want it to be someone who knows what they're talking about. I want their author bio to display that they know what they're talking about. And I want to include some links to their own social profile so people know it's like a real person and not like, some made up person. We give them author pages. We do all that stuff because I think just me as somebody who's like, if I was curious about this niche, right, I would read this article, I get to the bottom, like I'm curious about who wrote it. I'm curious about who is this for? Is it like just someone who plays on weekends? Are they a professional? Like, why should I listen to this person?
Yeah, that's true. Like you want to read something that's written by someone that has half a clue about what they're writing about, It's not just some rando who doesn't even have experience in that vertical.
Right. And I think it does matter in terms of like, if Google, paying attention to, like, we see it, right? The big guys are always doing better. Like, brand matters. Do you remember that? Do you remember that Neil Patel study way back in the day where he had a bunch of Instagram models like post signs that say, who is Neil Patel? And like he got all these searches to neilpatel.com, and like he saw his rankings improve across the board because he was essentially gaming his brand. I think that still matters. I think that stuff is still important. So if someone comes to our site, sees that this author knows what they're talking about, my hope is that they will also be a return visitor and not just like someone who comes, reads an article and bounces. So I think that matters as well.
100%. And I mean, like, in terms of building out like supplementary assets to your main site, are you focusing on like building out a YouTube channel, building out an email list? What are you doing? Anything like that? Like in the next couple of months, years? Do you have plans for stuff like that?
I want to. So there's a couple sites where I'm just treating them like they're side projects. Like I'm not going to invest in the brand. Like whatever, it makes $1,000 a month. I'm cool with that. It pays some bills, and like I get to spend an hour or two on that business a month, and whatever, $1,000. That's cool with me. There's some where it's like the main site I want to invest in more, right? I want to build an email list, want to build up the YouTube, because I think all those things are going to be important and matter long term, especially with like, I don't know, it feels like, with AI, I know everyone's beating it to death with ChatGPT and AI and all this stuff, but like, I don't know, it just feels like a good time to like build an email list in like different channels.
Yeah, I mean, onto that point about AI and stuff, like, what's your thoughts on AI content? Like, have you tested any of the AI content stuff over the years? It sounds like you're using more industry experts. Like, what have you done with the AI stuff, or you think like it's too risky? What's your viewpoint on it?
I think if you're a big site, you and I've probably seen on Twitter people mentioning that like, what was it, Bankrate or some of these big guys are testing it out and like clearly displaying this was AI generated with an editor, blah, blah, blah. And those articles are ranking. I think if you're a big site, you always get the benefit of the doubt. If you're a smaller site, newer player, feels risky to me. I mean, I'll use it for things that like don't really matter. Meta descriptions, coming up with a bunch of title variations, maybe just like sometimes if I'm stuck on an outline or a brief, it can help me get like unstuck. But I'm not like using any of these tools to like create a whole article. Again, my bet is people want to, there was this other tweet, like everyone wants AI content, no one wants to read it. And I think that's true. Like, man, I if we're writing about a specific thing that needs real life expertise and skill, I want to know that it was written by somebody who experienced that thing. Like, you know, I want my writers writing in like I, me, we, talking about anecdotes, experience, things like that. I think long term, that's kind of how you shield yourself from the oncoming onslaught of tons of AI content.
Yeah, I think like the thing about AI content, like especially from like ChatGPT, I think like a lot of it's very similar, you know, like at Christmas time, I showed my wife's dad who's like a specialist doctor. I was like, oh, test out ChatGPT, like ask it some questions, you know. And then his feedback was like, oh, a lot of this stuff's similar, you know, but I guess you have to word it in such a way, you know, like answer this as this type of person, and like you have to train it a bit. But I guess for someone from the general public who's not in the industry, they might not know that, you know, and he was trying out a few different queries and that was his feedback. So that was interesting to see, you know, like, and I think like you're right. Like if you're a small site, I think it could be risky because the chance that you're going to get hit is a lot higher than like a authority established brand that's like DR90, you know, and they've been around for 50 years or whatever, you know, that they're the chance that Google will devalue that, it's lower. And you know, you don't know how Google's going to react to something, you know. They kind of say one thing's fine and then they can kind of change their mind, you know. It's kind of volatile like that. So yeah, you got to be careful, you know. I think you have to invest in quality at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, everyone loves the big site case studies. And you just have to remember that like, just because it works for a big site, you know, it's not going to work for you. Like people talk about, oh, you shouldn't build links. You should just get natural links by creating quality content. It's like, if you're a small player, that is very hard to just do by creating, right? Like you got to go and do the manual effort and build stuff until, you know, you're not Asana, you're not ClickUp. Like you're not going to create this guide and have 100 links in a month. It's just a different game.
Well, that's so true. And that's the thing about like statistics led assets and things like that. Like everyone's been doing that for like the last 10 years now. So like
Right.
any decent statistic has like all these authority sites ranking for it, and they're the ones that are going to be getting the links. You know, if you're a small player and you start releasing a lot of this stuff, the chance that you're going to get links is quite low, you know. And it's like back to your point earlier that you said,
Right.
like when you're looking for keyword ideas, you'll go and find sites that are very low DR and low authority, and you'll just pick all the keywords off that. And it takes me back to a point I remember Gail Brenton said. He said if you've got a low DR site and you're ranking, you're at risk because people are just going to come and steal all your keywords. You know, he said like raise the authority of the DR of the site, because then you won't be on people's radar as much, you know, especially in like Ahrefs. People set filters and stuff and they're sourcing out these kind of sites, you know. Like
That's such a good point. I didn't even think about that. Like, it's hilarious. You're right. Like, I'm picking them out. They are targets. They have a bullseye on them. Man, you made me just kind of want to go to one of those, you know, those like Fiverr things where they raise your DR to 40 overnight. Yeah, you're right. Because people use that as a filter. Like whether
oh,
they
100%.
know it's low
Everyone's
DR.
doing that.
Yeah.
Everyone does that in Ahrefs, you know, like they set like 0 to 20 as like a filter, or 0 to 30. And then even like another common affiliate content tactic is where people look at like affiliate tracking links, and then they'll just look through all the tracking links and sort the content. And then they filter like the authority of the site too. And then they just go through and like, especially if it's a program that's converting highly, they're just going to go through and pick out all the content topics that are converting. And then all of a sudden you've got like 50 new players in your industry trying to target the same thing, especially if it's a lucrative kind of product that you're trying to push. So it's something to think about, you know. I mean, there are ways to increase your DR with like one common tactic to increase DR is like you can build a content asset, and then you can find a relevant expired domain with quality links to redirect into, like, say, a content asset on your site if it's super clean. That can usually push up your DR pretty quickly for a small site. Tested that a bit over the years, but it's an important point to think about, you know, and it's something I don't really see a lot of people in like the niche site community talking about and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're right. They aren't. Like, it's a lot of the affiliate marketers, they're not as vocal because they keep all the tactics close to the chest. You have to, right? It's such a cutthroat game. Affiliate SEOs are like some of the, you know, they're always pushing the envelope. Like, you need an edge because we're all writing about the 10 best, you know, electric toothbrushes. It's like, really, how do you differentiate? And so you got to push the envelope with something and try different things. So yeah, you're right.
100%. But on that note, I'll open the floor to questions from the team. I know some people might have some questions for you, Emil, just about some of the work they've done on the content front, or just anything else, you know, about some of these sites that you're building. So yeah, does anyone have any questions for Emil?
I got a question about dealing with external writers, and how do you like screen AI content? Like, do you have any practices in place or any like useful tools that flags AI content that you prefer?
You know, I have you heard of originality.ai? It's the same guy, Spencer Hawes, I think, or I forget his last name, but same guy who created Link Whisper, created this tool called originality.ai, and it helps you measure if something is AI written. I don't know if I think it's wrong a lot. I think it's just really hard to pick up because AI is getting good. Like, I have this writer I was telling you about in the real estate space. I've been working with him for years, and like, we were working together before AI content was like widely available and stuff. And I just decided to throw his content into one of these tools, and it came out like 68% AI content, and it looks exactly the same as he's always written and everything. I think he just writes very dry because it's like real estate and it's like a lot of facts and things like that the AI tool just kind of picks it up as AI. So I don't know that and I know for a fact he's not using AI tools because we've been working together, you know, for a long time. Not to say that he couldn't have started using, but his writing style hasn't changed where I'm like, this feels like it's different than it, you know, was 3 years ago. So I don't know. I don't know that the tools are like really trustworthy. I think there can be a lot of false positive, but that's one I've heard. The best thing you can do, I mean, is you encourage your like writers to add a lot of anecdotes into writing, because that, you know, AI can't tell you about its own personal experience. That's kind of how I try to incentivize writers to make sure, you know, creating unique stuff. James, do you know any other ones out there?
Oh man, there's heaps out there that are doing AI testing now, you know, like Hugging Face, I think, was one. I've heard of that originality.ai. I think someone like Cold Outreach just to test that too, like recently. I know Michael from our team had a list of them the other day too that he was sharing around. There's a whole bunch coming up. I've even seen like I think in the education system, there's like all these like education people like stressing out now with all the new AI stuff coming out. And there's a couple startups that have popped up in the last couple of months in that kind of area too. So it could be interesting to see that. I know like Turnitin, I think I saw some articles about like they're releasing some AI detection thing for students that are going to be writing essays in Chat GPT, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, I've tested Hugging Face for some content. Sometimes they work. Like we had a funny instance the other day. One of our clients, he said like another agency was like smashing him with like daily emails. And he put them through AI detection, and every one of the sales emails they were sending was AI. And then he just said, like, if they can't bother to write their own email, like, why the hell would I use them, you know? So he kind of called that out. So that was pretty funny too. But I think people are going to get more savvy, you know, and there's going to be a big market for AI detection. And yeah, I think there's been a lot of talk about like AI watermarks and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting next 12 to 24 months in that space. Like, there's going to be a lot of developments and stuff. We just got to be, you got to be on top of that stuff, you know, especially for clients, because yeah, big clients definitely think about that type of stuff, and yeah, we're monitoring it all.
Yeah, the watermark thing, I heard about that recently, and that sounds like really interesting. I actually think that would be really good, because it's getting better and harder to tell, right? So and yeah, like, man, think about how many people and kids in high school are just going to be like, write me a 5-page paper on, you know, Romeo and Juliet or whatever. So
Yeah.
English class, history class are all like ruined because of these tools or whatever. But yeah, I think that would be helpful. I think they'll get better. But right now, just, I don't know. I've tested them, and I think they're throwing off a lot of false positives.
Yeah, they are. I think 100%. Even like, I mean, like, we still use like Copyscape and stuff sometimes for testing content. Like, sometimes that pulls up like certain levels of uniqueness, but it's like it looks at like elements that are the same on many sites, you know, like it's
Right.
tricky. So you do have to, you just have to kind of test this stuff with like a grain of salt, you know, and like see what detection levels they have. And if you're using a freelance writer and everything's coming back 100%, then you got to worry, you know. But if
Right.
it's like 50 or 60%, I think yeah, it's like you said, you know, if you know the writer and you've worked with them for a while. And I think one of the biggest things that I always say is like, if the writer's content is ranking well in Google constantly on a consistent basis, that's, I feel like, is a good checkpoint too, you know.
Yep.
Hey,
Where do
Noah,
you see?
sorry, Scott, you can go.
You go, Richard. Richard, you go.
I just have a quick question. Just from an affiliate point of view, how often do you go back and sort of refresh or revamp or reframe like sort of your content? And is that worth doing, I guess, like on a frequent basis, like every month, for example?
Yeah, this is a good one. We actually, I just started a podcast with a buddy of mine. It's called Seeking Profit, and we like did our own testing for an episode. And like, you know, he has this site called Listen Money Matters that was a big personal finance podcast and website years ago, and got hit with a couple updates. And he just started neglecting it. And then he started testing. You know, he has this article on like the best Vanguard fund. So he went and tested changing titles, like really minimal changes, and all of a sudden he saw his ranking for that keyword go from 8 to 4 literally overnight. I've done it too, where I'm just like on old articles going and adding images, changing up some text. Like, I see it all the time, as like freshness is totally a ranking factor and can give you a really quick boost. Sometimes it's like a very what's the word, temporary boost, right? Like my friend, I think he went from 8 to 4, and then 2 weeks later he was back to 8 because all he did was change a title. It wasn't like a true change, but it shows that Google is like paying attention to changes. So for affiliate content, this year, so like last year I was just in, you know, we went from 14 articles to over 325 in like the span of 14 months. So I was just in creation mode. Part of this year, like, I have a goal to create, you know, X new articles, but also update 50 articles, as just because I know that's important, right? Like, if Google is telling us freshness matters, we're making these small changes and seeing jumps, you know, for affiliate content, it's got to be an important one as well. So I don't have like a standard process. I just have like, you know, as part of my goals for each one of these sites, like, go update 50 articles. And we'll probably do that before like the season for this sport really gets in full swing. So yeah, that's kind of what I've seen.
Yeah, awesome. That's my question. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question. Do you give like detailed feedback for every piece for a writer, and how do you find is the most effective form of feedback for them to edit themselves?
Yeah, so, you know, with a new writer, it's always a lot of work up front, right? So the first couple, I'm really trying to like give them as much feedback as possible, recording Loom videos. Like, I don't think I can give them enough feedback because I want it to get to a point where it's like super minimal. The other layer we have is I have an editor who I've always had an editor, but I finally found an editor who I think will be like a good long-term solution. That is a good stopgap as like a person who can help you like, you know, make sure the writing is up to a certain level, can help you position the company's product a certain way. So I think it's like a lot of feedback up front, making sure your brief, like in the beginning, I make my brief super detailed until again, they kind of start to get my thought process and incorporate it with like less of my guidance. And then on the back end, making sure my editor, same thing, new editor comes on, I'm giving them tons of feedback about how to think about this client, how we structure things like that.
Awesome. And is the feedback based on a point of view from like an SEO perspective, or is it like creative feedback for the writing so that it's like quality content?
Yeah, it's more of the latter. You know, like if I'm creating a brief, it'll have all the H2s I want the person to cover. You know, we'll get a list of, you know, all the keywords to cover in, you know, topic and clear scope. They all have the grader. So we just include all those keywords, ask them to hit like 70 to 75% of those keywords where it makes sense. So mostly it's on like quality or like, you know, a lot of times I think the biggest thing with writers is they go very surface level, like they just answer something very basically. And so it's a lot of like, go deeper here. Why did you do it that way? Or how does this work? So just getting them to like really divulge details is usually my biggest point of feedback to make something better.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Did you have another question, Scott? I know before you were trying to ask something.
No, I was going to say, like, what do you reckon the next 12 months going to look like with hiring freelancers for writing content? Do you think that there's just going to be like a flood of AI content about to hit affiliate sites pretty much?
It's going to be weird, man. It's like if you haven't starting a new site, it's going to be tough. Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that one. Luckily, like all of my personal, I have 3 sites I have right now, and I'm like, that's too many, right? It's like hard to even focus on 3, and client, you know, client stuff comes first and foremost. This is like, you know, side hustle night and weekend, and I try to just work to make it more hands off for me. It is going to be tough because a lot of freelance writers are just going to, you know, grab a Jasper subscription or a ChatGPT subscription and start pumping out, you know, garbage content. Not garbage, but like AI, you know, not unique, nothing. Again, the biggest thing the way I'm trying to combat it is I'm making sure that there's anecdotes, there's I, me, we, there's personal stories, there's just experience being talked about. Like that's what I harp on for every writer. And if I'm not seeing that, it's usually like the first thing I look for in writing. Like if they're not including that on test assignments, they're usually a pass for me. Like I want to see a lot of that stuff anyway.
Yeah, fair enough. Be interesting to see, like James said, I guess what's going to happen this year, how Google's going to react to it as well, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you've seen like, you know, people spin up AI, you know, like they're like programmatic sites. They're spinning up a lot of content, 1,000 pages in like a week with AI content, and they like short term, boom, like 100,000, you know, 100,000 visits a month in Ahrefs, and then in a span of a month, Google catches up and shuts the site down. So they're catching them, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they do with like, that's such an obvious example, right? Like for Google to catch up to that. What happens if you're more so playing within the rules and you're using AI content? It'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't know.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
What do you think, James? What's your kind of thought there?
Yeah, it's gonna be tricky. You know, there's gonna be a lot of AI content coming into the market, and I think Google's gonna have to react in some way. You know, maybe slowing down indexing of content like they've already been doing, stuff like that. There could be anything, but yeah, sorry, Amy, I'll let you ask your question. Sorry.
Oh, good. Just on your point of view there about the client, the writer getting in like I, we, them. How would you recommend that they do that for say a client content piece where they're not in the article? There's no like author profile.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out too. It's really easy for your own sites, but for client stuff, it's harder because a lot of clients don't want that. They want it more like general, you know, for lack of a better term, they want it kind of professional business speak versus like, you know, you're reading something from a friend. So I'm trying to figure that out as well. For me, I think the way I get around it is getting a lot of examples, right? So again, it's this surface level thing that a lot of writers will do, like, what is X, right? And they'll just define it in 3 sentences. Cool, that's good for a snippet or whatever, but like, give me an example. Show me with real numbers. Like get into examples. You don't have to talk about it in your own personal experience, but I think that is a good way to kind of show, again, experience, and this person knows what they're talking about and they can demonstrate. That's how I've tried, at least so far.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Does anyone have any final questions for Emil? I think we gotta wrap it up.
Hey, Emil. Thanks for the presentation so far.
Sure.
Yeah, I was just wondering what project management software you use for your agency and your own personal projects to help manage your writers and other team members. And then
Yes.
secondly, sorry, do you have any tips for avoiding bottlenecks in your operations?
Yeah. Okay. So good questions. Project management, everything lives in Trello right now. For the personal side, the content side, affiliate side stuff, because like I'll use the main site as an example, right? We have 3 writers. So what I do is each writer I think has their own strength, which you kind of find out with time, and they create content. So like every week, usually on Sundays, I'm creating a couple briefs for these writers, tagging their names, and it just sits in a queue and they can just come grab it, start writing, and then they tag me in that card and move it to, you know, just Kanban style, move it to like the draft completed section and tag me. And that gives me a heads up. So on some sites I have at that point, you know, I'll just do a quick run through and I'll assign it to a VA to go upload, add some pictures, you know, use Link Whisper or whatever. My main site, I haven't given up the reins on that one just because we do a lot more affiliate content, and I don't know, I've been lazy. I need to it's like my baby. It's the hardest thing to let go of. I need to, because VA helps me a ton on my other sites. I just don't know why I can't give up the reins on like the main site. So that's kind of just, everything really just lives in Trello, and a VA is, man, you find a good VA, they're so helpful, especially for like, there's so many mundane tasks, like, again, loading it up in WordPress, finding images, you know, just some basic formatting and stuff that you can outsource to somebody for $5-10 an hour.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Emil.
Sure.
All right. No, thanks, Emil, for coming on to chat to the team today. Appreciate your time. Some great tips for everyone. Yeah, look forward to seeing this on YouTube soon. And yeah, hopefully we see you in Australia one day.
Man, I'm itching because you guys have awesome surf, so I need to get to Australia. A little harder with 2 kids now, but you know, once they're a little older, I think Australia trip is on our radar for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that far from LA.
No.
You know, like 14 hours. And yeah, there's heaps of beaches around everywhere, you know, Sydney, North Coast, like Queensland, you know.
Yep.
You won't be spoiled for choice. But no, really appreciate your time, and yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. That was
Emil.
awesome.